Fandom Portals podcast, where your curiosity meets community in a celebration of all things geek. We build connections on every episode by delving into your favorite fandom questions and the time it takes you to roll 3 natural 20s in a row. I'm your host, Aaron Davies, and today we are thrilled to be joined by the legendary Brasher, better known as Adam Brasher. A professional D&D player who lives and breathes tabletop role-playing, he's one of the voices behind the incredible D&D Valiant podcast, where he brings to life the characters of Felix and Liliana Unili. Whether you're a seasoned adventurer or just starting your first campaign, Adam's stories, insights, and energy will take your love for D&D to the next level. Best of all, he's a really good friend of mine, and I'm really stoked to have him here. So, Adam, how are you going? What's been going on with you?
I'm very good. I'm very busy, and I'm glad to actually be back.
Now, let's get a little bit of an insight on you. You've been playing D&D for a while, and you have a really interesting story with Critical Role, which is going to be the topic of today's podcast. Did you want to give us a brief rundown of your history with Dungeons and Dragons?
Yep. So I played a little bit back when I was in my wee years of high school. I then got off of it a lot because, peer pressure of things weren't as cool as they could be, and you have to try and be cool especially later in high school.
Yeah.
And then after years of neglecting a lot of my nerd side, I guess it's just one day I was like, you know what? I want to play D&D again. And so I just started this Facebook page and got a whole bunch of people to come and organize something with the gaming bar here in Townsville, and got a whole 100 people to rock up to this bar and all play Dungeons and Dragons. So that was the reigniting of my Dungeons and Dragons. And I was hoping just to play, but then I ended up DMing for a lot of people, and then eventually found my way to your table, which is really great.
Yeah. That's how we met, actually. We met through some people that actually went to that event that we know mutually. And then, you came and joined the D&D Valiant Odyssey podcast table, and the rest between you and I is history. You play Felix and you play Liliana Unili. What's your experience been like on the podcast of D&D Valiant Odyssey? And then we'll go on to talk about some Critical Role stuff.
I've loved every second of it. I really had a really soft spot for Felix, because just how I think he brought out the pureness in myself even as well, because he was so always on the straight and narrow, and he was always trying his best to be the best person he could be. And
yeah, the ups and downs of the D&D table, it definitely brings out the best and the worst of us. But I agree. I think Felix was a bright light at the table. I think it was really great sort of character to come and join a party. And yeah, you played him to perfection. So if you guys want to go and check out Adam Brasher playing Felix, a adorably awesome tabaxi, then make sure you go.
Idiot.
Yeah, make sure you go and check out the D&D Valiant Odyssey podcast. That one's hosted by yours truly as well. But today we're here for a different reason. Here on Fandom Portals, we are looking at the Legend of Vox Machina. We're looking at this because it's part of our October run of animation celebration, celebrating the 28th of October being International Animation Day. And this animation is a star-studded one, not only because it has a great cast, but also because this one is inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. It's a cartoon that was initially funded by Kickstarter and broke the record for the fastest backed project on the platform. It actually secured $11.3 million from more than 88,000 people, and that was only in 45 days. And today, we are deep diving on this beloved piece of art. So by the end of this podcast, with the help of Brasher, you guys will uncover the Easter eggs hidden in episodes 1 and 2 of The Legend of Vox Machina and see how they capture the essence of the TTRPG and its transition into animation. You'll discover which Dungeons & Dragons elements inspired some of the greatest moments in the show, diving deep into the lore and mechanics behind them. You'll get to know some of the most inclusive and creative content creators as we share their passion for Critical Role, Dungeons & Dragons, and animation, and the collaborative magic behind it. And along the way, you'll learn more about D&D, its rich world, and how it continues to influence pop culture today. So, Brash, are you ready to jump into episodes 1 and episodes 2 of The Legend of Vox Machina?
I am.
Very good. All right, beautiful. So these 2 episodes are titled The Terror of Taldore, Part 1 and Part 2. And it's a really great jumping in point for anybody who's into sort of fantasy-esque cartoons. It has a great cast of characters. And I think we might go to start off with by giving just a brief rundown of the show. So it's basically surrounding this party of adventurers, obviously inspired by D&D, who have a varying range of abilities. At the start of this TV show, they're kind of mercenaries looking for work, and they're banded together for no reason in particular other than they're all kind of just losers. And then as the show goes on, they kind of bond and become a found family, you might say, and they face challenges along the way, using their abilities and strengths to make the group as a whole a unified and fighting force in the land of Teldore. So each episode actually is inspired by the campaign run by Matthew Mercer, created through Critical Role, and it has a cast of a few of the different voice actors that he plays with. So did you want to go through some of those for me, Adam, and tell us a little bit about the characters that they play as well, just briefly?
Yep. So the actual CEO now of Critical Role, which is Travis Willingham, you also might know him. He's the voice of Roy Mustang from Fullmetal Alchemist. He's also the voice of Thor from the animations. He is a phenomenal voice actor, and he's actually probably, out of all the cast members, probably my favorite. I'm even wearing the Strongjaw Ale shirt that's based off of his character Grog Strongjaw, who is a Goliath barbarian, but you'll notice in the show they call him a giant because of distancing a little bit from
the
Wizards
terminology.
of the Coast.
Yeah, Wizards of the Coast, yeah.
So you see him being referred to as a giant rather than. But yeah, he is the barbarian, strongman, very dumb. Yet somehow sometimes, and this has happened throughout the actual campaign itself as well, he'll have sparks of like genius. And then they'll be like, wow, you're actually not as dumb as we think you are. And then he'll say something dumb. And they'll be like, there it is.
Just to prove that point.
Yeah, that's it. And he always closely followed by Pike Trickfoot, played by Ashley Johnson, who is also the voice of Ellie in The Last of Us. And she also played Ellie's mum in the live action TV show. She plays Pike Trickfoot, the cleric gnome. Her grandfather actually rescued Grog. Then you have Scanlan Shortholt, who's played by Sam Riegel, who has done many voices for games in anime, but he's also very proficient or prolific in the casting aspect of it too. He does a lot of casting for shows, and he's casting as a casting director. Scanlan Shortholt, the classic bard, and by classic bard I mean the one that is always memed.
Yeah, he's a little cheeky.
A little cheeky. He's especially cheeky in the show. Then you have the twins, Vex and Vax, played by Laura Bailey and Liam O'Brien. Again, both massive voice actors. Laura especially, she's done everything from playing Trunks in Dragon Ball Z, Black Widow, but they play the twins, the half-elf twins, Vax being the rogue, or Vax'ildan being the rogue. Loves these daggers, and Vex is the ranger with her bear trinket. Then you have Percy. I'm not going to try and say his whole name.
Yes, he's got a mouthful of one.
Mouthful of name, but Percy DeRollo III. He was the first probably adoration of like a gunslinger.
Yeah.
In probably the 5e of D&D. It was created for his character. He has a very troubled backstory, which is in season 2. And then we've got Keyleth, played by Marisha Ray. When I first started watching Vox Machina, was a little about some Keyleth, but very quickly she really grew on me as like, because she's sort of the same as Felix in a way. She's sort of that happy-go-lucky, like, come on, gang, let's go, be positive. And then
the heart of the crew.
Yeah, exactly. And it, like at first it annoyed me, but then like it really grew on me. Like she wormed her way in. But yeah, so she plays Keyleth, the heir of Shari, and she's running around the world trying to do her Amante. Which if she completes it, she becomes the new leader of the Ashari. And who are we missing? We're missing
Matthew,
or the DM, who plays a variety of characters. He's an amazing voice actor and an amazing DM.
So yeah, they're a very talented crew, and they've definitely taken their passion for Dungeons and Dragons and really run with it. So I think with our character introductions aside, we'll jump into the episodes. Episode 1, obviously titled The Terror of Tal'Dorei.
Tal'Dorei, yeah.
Part 1.
Part 2.
Yeah, part 1 we'll jump into. And I think the first thing that was noticeable to me was two things. Is in the introduction scene, obviously Matt is doing the narration over the top of the introduction to the first show. And the camera flare at the very start, obviously in the center, features a D20 sort of shape. That was the first thing. But then the second thing, you see that raven sort of swoop through, which is obviously reminiscent in the title sequence as well. The raven obviously being a symbol later on in Critical Role that is very, very important, linked to the character of Vax'il Dan. He is eventually, through various courses of action, going to be the matron of the Raven Queen, and that is her symbology. And she sort of looks after death and life and the transition and the journey throughout both of those. But she's also very well associated with the threads of life as well. And you'll see in the start sequence where all of those golden threads just sort of whip around all of the characters. And that is supposed to be a metaphor for like destiny and the way that their destiny is sort of intertwined as characters that bring them all together. So that was the very start and that nod to the Raven Queen.
Yeah, because you'll notice a lot of ravens throughout the whole entire show, actually. Just here and there, you'll just see them all over the place, which is because the whole entire campaign, like campaign 1, though you don't really notice it till the end, is heavily revolved around the Raven Queen. But yeah, it's probably like one of my favorite parts of the entire show. And it's just a quick part. It's the first adventurers you meet.
Yeah, called the Murder Hobos.
Flies off, and you see them staying on the hill, and they all have similar mechanisms to some like characters from a little known book movie, maybe Lord of the Rings, and then they all just get wiped out.
Absolutely. No, that's a really great sort of opening too, and I love the fact that they're called the murder hobos. Can you tell everybody that's listening, like what's a murder hobo? Why is that significant to D&D? Because they put that in there purposefully for everybody that knew.
If you're a group of murder hobos, that means you just go around and you pretty much kill everything, and you don't really focus on any part of the actual story. You just kill things.
Because, murder hoboing can be fun for the person doing it, but obviously for the other people they're trying to enjoy and the DM who's crafted the story for you, it can be a little harsh. So Wizards of the Coast sort of allowing that sort of line for those sort of players as well, bringing out the campaign for them. I thought it was a bit sort of tongue-in-cheek that the creators here of the Vox Machina cartoon actually killed them off straight away, like absolutely annihilated them in the most destructive way possible. Just to show, like murder hobos is not a thing that they enjoy here at Critical Role.
And another thing I like, and I think it shows, is that this isn't a kid's cartoon.
Yeah.
Because the live action is very heavily like blood and guts and gore, and obviously like it's described in the show. But like in their show they swear like sailors.
Lots of adult themes in the Twitch live stream show.
Twitch live stream. So I like how like the straight away the first scene, this is what you're gonna expect from the show.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it probably didn't catch many people off guard because those that watch the show and back the show know exactly what they're in for it. So
yeah.
And that's a pretty quick point for parents to sort of click it off if they've accidentally put on the Vox Machina cartoon with their kids.
Nope.
Yeah, not on. Yeah. After this scene, we kind of transition onto a beautiful shot of Aman, and then we get to see the Council of Tal'Dorei, and they have got some stars behind the mic. So first of all, Sir Finch, played by Tony Hale. You've got Lady Kima Vord by Stephanie Beatriz. Heaps and heaps more throughout the series as well. The guest stars that they've got here are just absolutely 10 out of 10, including like General Krieg, voiced by David Tennant in his traditional Scottish, which you rarely see.
So good.
So thick as well. And then, as the series goes on, you see more and more of these stars, including like Troy Baker later makes an appearance, and they even have Billy Boyd, who played Pippin in The Lord of the Rings. Like, these sort of guest stars are sort of reminiscent to me of some of the guest stars that they have on the Critical Role live stream as well, because they do have people coming in from time to time to play various different characters. And then after we sort of move in from the council, them obviously telling everybody that the place is under siege from this massive threat, this unknown threat that's sort of carousing through the land. They talk about needing the best mercenaries in the land, and we smash cut to possibly the worst mercenaries in the entire land, which is the tribe of Vox Machina. And we see them in a scene that is very, very common in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign to be the first ever combat scenario that you do. I think it was really awesome that they included like little tidbits like this that sort of make the D&D knowledge base in the fans just sort of come to life. Where Goliaths or Giantkin are usually known to be extremely competitive, and they put that in the show in this small piece of dialogue just for those real fans to just sort of get behind and know, just have that gotcha moment. When they move into the combat, though, of the bar scene, there is so many various different spells and moves and little tidbits from the show that we can sort of pick apart as well. So one of them obviously being Keyleth grasping vines, which we talked a bit off mic about, knowing that sort of Keyleth does the hand motion from the live show every time that her character does it in the animated show. They've actually included that in there as well, which is another nod to the great TV show and a great sort of Easter egg as well.
Yeah. Marisha Ray's famous hand up and grasp down for all her spell casting, which is, she just put the dramatic into it. But yeah, and even Percy with his misfiring of his gun.
Yeah.
Because that happens way too often in the actual live action show. But poor Percy, he always, when it's critically needed, his gun will misfire, and he'll have to spend a turn fixing his gun.
Fixing it, yeah. Which is a D&D mechanic, obviously, as you said, that they made for that campaign being brought over from Pathfinder. But obviously, as he rolled a 1, the gun would break. He'd have to spend that time sort of repairing it as well. I even liked where they showed Vax and Vex, which is the 2 half-elf twins, for the first time. Vax is there sort of pickpocketing during the fight and throwing the gold to Vex. And they did that because in the live show, the player who played Vex, Laura Bailey, was actually responsible for the party's funds, and she actually was a character that was pretty money hungry, wasn't she? She was a bit of a gold hoarder.
Yep, and they relentlessly made fun of her for it during the show, and even in the other campaigns, they continuously, they'll say, oh, "Hey, Laura, your Vex is showing."
Yes,
when money gets involved. So I thought it was a really good nod to that, and how money hungry that she really is.
Yeah.
I do like the introduction of Scanlan, though, too, during the bar fight, doing what he does best.
Absolutely, yeah.
Serenading the the bar owner's daughter.
Exactly, yeah. In classic Bard fashion, Sam Riegel plays the Bard so well, and, he's actually made Bards famous because of the way that he played Scanlan Shortholt. And, they've really sort of put him in the thick of it, literally. And, you really get a good glimpse of that character, and sort of harkens back to how he was played by Sam in the live show as well. I even liked how, Pike does her sort of yellow shield that goes around her forearm, denoting the Shield of
Faith.
Shield of Faith, yeah, which is a D&D spell that, obviously augments your AC to +2 as well. And it's just those small nods that us as D&D players and anybody sort of watching can just sort of pick up as you're looking at it. And it's almost like you could do it as a game almost, or like a Where's Wally. You could find the D&D moments in this sort of area. It's really, really good for the fans.
Make a good drinking game.
Yeah, and even the moment where Vax is throwing the dagger and he has that returning dagger, a classic sort of weapon that is symbolic of Vax. But he also, if you look closely, you can see him wearing the green belt that he wears early on in the campaign that's sort of shaped like the snake.
Yeah.
Because that's Simon, his pet snake from the show.
Yeah, she uses in the 3rd episode, I think.
Yeah. Did you know that the bartender was actually a Kickstarter created character?
Great character, yeah.
Yeah. So Sam, Liam, and Travis made that character with the Kickstarter backers, and it was voiced as well by Mason Alexander Park. And that's a really great sort of fan service, and something that this crew of Critical Role is known for is they love their critters, they involve them wherever they can, and this is just another nod to that. So I really loved the addition of that sort of Minotaur-like character with the pink hair behind the bar that was obviously created by the Kickstarter backers.
I love how she's, and I wish they'd make more of these kind of characters, like actual characters in like D&D itself, like the shape-shifting characters.
Yeah.
So there's even in now campaign 3, you've got Travis playing that werewolf character that pretty much Matt built, because there is no real, you got the shifters, but then there's nothing that really is like, okay, I'm going from a human transforming into a werewolf. There's
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
really like that. There's like ones where you got a bit more facial hair and grow some teeth and you get some sharp claws, and that's about
Yeah, you
it.
get a bit more animalistic, but yeah,
Yeah,
unless you're going down the druid route and actually,
turn
wild
into
shaping, yeah, there's
yeah.
nothing other than that. So yeah, I
So
really like that they sort of
yeah,
added the
I like how
creativity.
she just seemed like she had like the purple skin, saying that she probably wasn't entirely human, but she
Yeah,
like walked up and then just turned into this minotaur, and I'm like, so it's sort of like she's turned into like a wereball or something like that.
yeah. It's a really cool addition and showing how creative they are as well, We then go outside of the bar. They're obviously kicked out. They say that, they've been kicked out of every single bar in Oman. And Scanlan puts his loot into the bag of holding, which is another great D&D sort of reference, a bag of holding being a bag that holds literally anything that you can carry, which beats the encumbrance math for all those D&D players out there, which we absolutely love because encumbrance rules are rubbish. And then as Scanlan needs to go and relieve himself, we see a very special NPC.
So in just about every episode, you'll see a character that's very distinctly reminds you of a certain DM of a very famous D&D show, Critical Role. And he always seems to have his head pop in here and there, but you'll see a guard posting up the sign looking for adventurers to track down some vicious creature that's been destroying farmlands. And while Scanlan's relieving himself, notices this, turns and pees on said Matt Mercer's foot.
Yeah. Which I think is an allegory for all the times that Sam Riegel as a player has actually, wrecked Matt's plans in the most comical and also, really
Yeah,
brilliant of ways. But yeah, I think it's awesome to see Matt's likeness in this show, being the creator of the whole entire universe, and actually seeing him amongst the characters of Vox Machina was really heartwarming to me as well. But yeah, you do see him in quite a few episodes. So if you're watching this for the first time or you hadn't noticed that before, definitely go and do a rewatch and see how many times you can spot Matt Mercer throughout the episodes. Another thing I like to do as well is Matt obviously voices XYZ of the characters on each of the episodes. So I like to try and pick out his voice as they sort of go through as well. One of the characters he actually did voice was Agar, the voice of the orc, which had his hand cut off in the aforementioned bar scene. So he does have quite a few roles in each of the episodes, so keep your ears out for that too.
they make their way to the council, where
Yeah.
they are currently discussing where all the mercenaries have gone, where the murder hobos have been murdered.
Yeah, they go through a plethora of all the different mercenaries that have been destroyed by this unknown force. As they approach the keep as well, you can see the critical role symbol on the door of the keep to Iman with the the D20 with the sword plunging through the middle of it. And then as they get there, everybody gets to pass through. They notice, the guards themselves notice that Vox Machina smells like absolute garbage, and then Trinket gets left behind. Yeah. Obviously a continuing theme throughout the campaign of the D&D table as well. When you have a big bulky bear, obviously he's not allowed in some places. So Laura had to come up with some creative ways as to how to get him into places and how to maneuver him through situations. Laura being Vex, the owner of Trinket as well.
And I do like how even in this, Scanlan is not the biggest Trinket fan, I would like to say. Because in this, I know in the live show, he tried to get Trinket killed on many occasions.
Yeah, he's Trinket's biggest hater, and he kind of gives off vibes like the dad that doesn't want the dog,
Yeah.
but he actually does not want the dog.
Yeah.
So it's very funny. It's very funny to look at and see all the different ways that he tries to mess with Vex. And Scanlan breaks into song as he introduces the cast of Vox Machina, basically. And, this is something that Sam did quite regularly on the show.
I don't know how he does it. He's very good at improv, especially improv songs. And in the live action, he'd actually take popular songs or well-known songs and just make up his own lyrics to go with those songs a lot. But in this, he does like a more regal, bubbly song to really heighten up and talk up his group. And then he gets to him, like he starts talking about each of characters, Grog, how he's all strong, Pike with her faith and can heal anything, the twins, how they throw daggers and how they can never miss and they'd kill anything, and Percy with his pepper box that'll blow your head off. And then, of course, he gets to himself at the end, where he then breaks into a rap. And goes a little bit too far until he's pulled up by, I think it is Uriel who pulls him up by going, and then he goes back in to finish off the song. But yeah, I that's one of my favorite things is Sam's, well, when he was a bard, his songs, but also how it then turned into him doing all the sponsor ads at the start of the show.
So it's probably like some of the best marketing you could buy on Twitch, really.
Easy.
Because, everybody's waiting to watch this show. It's watched by so many people, and, his creative brilliance just sort of takes this campaign and sings it through as either the bard Scanlan would, or, as Sam would as the campaigns progressed, and he was no longer playing Scanlan. But back to the episode.
Yes.
We get the first sort of glimpse here at Vex, who expresses one of her ranger's abilities, and it's kind of the first little indication that, something's not quite right in this sort of scene, and it's the very first sort of triggering event that shows that there's something wrong. So this is a ranger ability.
Yes, so as a ranger, you get a favored enemy, and because of her backstory, her favored enemy is dragons. So she does not like dragons. So she studied them in her ranger studies sort of deal. So that now she can sort of get sort of like a spidey sense of when, like she can get a spidey sense of when the enemy's nearby, or sort of like an inkling of it. And you sort of see that in the episode. You might think she's got a headache because she's so drunk, but it's actually because in that room somewhere, someone has been either near. But I do like how it doesn't pinpoint, because the actual ability doesn't pinpoint. It just says there's something in that direction.
The presence, Yeah,
the presence of it's in that area, in that direction. So she's looking at these group of people, and she's like, something doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and they really set the scene as Sir Fince being the one who is drawing that ire. But as we watch on, obviously we find out that it's General Krieg who is in fact Brimside. So after they're in this hall and they take some time to convince the sovereign and the council to give them a chance on this sort of journey, they end up doing so, and they take an airship all the way across to the Shale Steppes, I believe it's called, and then they start their real journey to find out what is occurring and why all these people are dying. But we talked a little bit off air as well about how on the airship, Scanlan actually goes and has a little bit of a chat to Vex and Vax, who always seem to whisper, and that was reminiscent of Liam and Laura's character as well at the table of Critical Role, where they'd always try to sort of whisper and have little private conversations.
Scanlan walks up and pretty much just says, "Why are you guys whispering? We can all hear you." And sort of a nod at usually they're around the table and they can't really whisper to each other because they're right next to each other on the table and everyone can hear them. So I thought that was a pretty nice little nod at the fact that, it still makes it seem like they're all just sitting around a table playing a game.
Yeah, no, I like that too. And then, they land and they start to go on their trek, and we see Keyleth, talking to the plants in the village as we go through, which is another D&D spell, which she commonly does as well because she's very awkward with people. And then we see Vax interact with this kid, and this is one of my sort of favorite moments because it kind of reminds me of how Vax or Liam's character would go and interact with the character of Kynan later on in Campaign 1, which is the small boy who tried to join Vox Machina in the Twitch campaign. In the cartoon here, in The Legend of Vox Machina, it's obviously a different boy, but he kind of gives that kid a silver coin and he says, this is going to help you fight monsters. And I love this part because, silver is such a very big vulnerability for lots of monsters in the D&D player's handbook. And that was like a little nod to that sort of thing as well. He's trying to keep these people safe. So it's a nod to both the Twitch campaign and the D&D lore, which was awesome to see. And, they go on through this sort of moment as they're making their way through the village, and they still haven't really found that uniting factor that sort of brings them all together. And then as they venture off after this, they sort of get to that moment where they realize, we actually have to do this together.
I will just say too, the father of the children, he was voiced by Matt as well.
That's another Matt, yep.
Another Matt, and the girl and boy were actually Sam and Liam's daughter and son.
Oh my gosh, that makes it so much worse as to what happens later on in the episode. We start to see as they exit this village as well, a little bit of a romance sort of developing between Vax and Keyleth's character. That's an ongoing theme through campaign 1 as well.
Yeah. So when you see that with actually a lot of the characters, too. But in the actual live action, it did take a lot longer for them to sort of connect. But I think because of the fact that the show has to be so squashed in a way, they had to
8 episodes.
they sort of had to like bring it forward. So because they don't actually really start getting together until I think it's roughly around when Keyleth decides that she wants to be a golden god and jumps off a cliff and dies.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of brings it to it, doesn't it? It's like 100 or so, maybe even more, 100 or so episodes in. But yeah, they definitely fast track it, and they lay the pebbles for that early on in this sort of early
which I think
encounter.
they're doing for a lot of them, which is good because because realistically they didn't know how many seasons they were going to get.
Exactly,
So
and they didn't
had
even
to
know how
try
many episodes they were going to get because they initially appealed for a 20-minute or a 40-minute special or something like that, which would have been these first 2 episodes, not knowing what was to come, obviously. But yeah, I agree. I think they had to really sort of squash all the little things in that they could. But that being said, it really sort of didn't feel rushed as, you know, as it could have, knowing how much content there could be, you know. And if you're coming in blind to this and you don't know the Critical Role Twitch show, it really just flows like a regular sort of cartoon.
And I think that's hats off to like the whole entire cast because they all came in and especially Matt in that, like going through the story saying, all right, yes, we can keep this. No, we can cut that. We can keep this. We can cut that. And I reckon for them, I reckon it would be so hard for them to cut certain things.
Absolutely.
Like if they could, they'd do a whole 400 hours content if they really could. But yeah, unfortunately, that would be a lot of money and a lot of episodes,
a lot of time too. Yeah,
yeah.
But then we sort of get a few more D&D sort of references through this area where they're sort of trekking through the forest, and obviously exploration is one of the 3 key pillars of any Dungeons and Dragons game. And the ranger really shines through in these moments as well. And we see Vex leading the party through the terrain, and she's doing the tracking, which is an indication that she's made a survival check, which is when you roll your d20 and you check it against your survival skill. She then senses her dragon again during using her sort of primeval awareness and using her favored enemy as well. And then, you know, you get that classic scene in all monster movies where that massive foot just smashes something and leaving it in a bloody mess and battle ensues. Or, as you say in Dungeons & Dragons, roll initiative. And during the fight scenes, I think, is where we see most of the D&D mechanics come into play. And I think they do a really good job of portraying them, but not rigidly sticking to them, obviously, because we all know that sometimes Dungeons & Dragons combat can get a little bit clunky. So we do get things like, Vax always throws his 3 daggers, which is his catchphrase. He always throws 3 daggers and he says dagger, dagger, dagger every time. And then, they're fighting the blue dragon as well.
I believe one of the abilities for a dragon is its frightful presence.
Yeah.
And I think from how it seemed, Keyleth might have failed her, I'm assuming, a wisdom check.
Wisdom check, yeah.
And got too scared to do anything. So she pretty much spent the whole fight just squatted down, just terrified.
Yeah. Which is, one of the abilities of the dragon, to keep everybody frightened, which is a condition you can have where you literally can't do anything. You can't move closer to the creature. Everything you do is with disadvantage. You're absolutely stuffed. Yeah.
And so the only thing you can do is move away from the target you're fearful of, if you want to move anyway. He does his lightning breath, which he uses. Usually he'd use lightning breath and then you have to roll a d6 and hopefully get it back. If not,
he was getting them back quite often.
He was. A lot. And just with his claws, attack, tune, bites, everything like that. But you see Grog, he gets taken out almost immediately, which is, I believe, actually what happened in the live game. They were saying he actually did get taken out almost immediately. He ran in, he charged in there full force, got taken out absolutely immediately, and that's where I think Sam's character, he was like, "Oh, great, Grog's down already," and then he goes and ducks behind a log. And you see Pike again using her Shield of Faith to guard her and Scanlan from the lightning breath. But definitely definitely a strong foe to be facing. I think they were only roughly like maybe level 8.
Yeah.
I think at the time it'd be definitely a tough one to win, and
Yeah. The
was
challenge
almost a
rating on that one.
TPK.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think the most interesting part for that one for me, obviously you mentioned the lightning breath, and we were talking vulnerabilities and immunities before as well, but blue dragons are traditionally lightning users, and therefore when you use lightning against them, sometimes that lightning doesn't really do much to that dragon, and that's also reminiscent of that D&D mechanic as well that they've inserted into the show without explicitly sort of saying,
yeah,
they're immune or...
immune. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
and
really
then
good.
yeah, after their almost TPK, Keyleth manages to save them by building a fine dome. I don't know if that's an actual
Yeah,
spell, but she does it and ends up saving them. And I do. One thing I do notice is you'll see when Brimside looks into the rubble, you'll see a hand, and that's the
yeah,
hand of the orc that he cut
that they cut
off
off. Yeah,
in the bar fight. But another thing is you'll always, especially in season 1, and actually probably in all seasons really, all campaigns, they always have body parts.
yeah, in their
They
bag of
always have body
holding.
parts in their bag of holding.
Yeah. This will come up again when we talk about episode 2, I'm sure, because there's an Easter
Yeah,
egg about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They always have
always
gory
have
stuff.
body parts. So like, yeah,
Mm.
you see the hand there, like this dismembered hand, and he's like, "Oh, cool, I've killed him," and he flies off, and they
Obviously would have kept that, yeah.
all come
And
back
then,
out again, and
yeah, and
Grog's
then
a bit wounded.
he's obviously, after the battle, Grog's more damage than everybody else. And I like to believe that this is sort of a callback to how Goliaths can take extra damage when they rage, obviously taking half damage from any sort of physical sort of attack. But he's sort of standing there, obviously bleeding out, and then Pike uses that Cure Wounds spell, which really goes and bites them later on when they exhibit one of the most important rules for spellcasters in Dungeons & Dragons, and they show it in episode 1 of The Legend of Vox Machina.
And they wander off and head back towards the village, where they see that Brinside not only messed them up, but also went back and doubled back and destroyed the little village that they were visiting.
Yeah, the Shale Steps is now demolished.
Yep. And straight away, Vex runs off ahead of the group, which he actually did a lot in live action too. He'd
Yeah, he
always
did.
run off
Got him
ahead.
into heaps of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But he runs off.
That's rule number 1 of D&D,
Yeah.
isn't it? You'd never go
Don't
off
split
alone.
party.
Don't split the party.
He runs off to the house where the kids lives to see if they had made it. And unfortunately, the father, the mother, and the daughter were crisped on the floor
That's a good way to put it.
of the little hut, and the rest join, and it's a bit somber. And then they hear a coughing in the cupboard, and Vex and Grog move a beam out of the way and pull out the little boy who is barely hanging on. Pike goes to heal him, and unfortunately, she has run out of spell slots and therefore cannot heal him. As she stated earlier, that the healing of Grog really took it out of her.
Yeah.
And then that showed here where she had no energy left to heal the boy.
Yeah, she was too exhausted. I think that's a really good way to express the fact that you're out of spell slots when you're in a role play moment as well. And they did it really well in the show. I'm too exhausted to do this right now, or there's nothing I can do. My energy's not working, that kind of thing. Because, that's one of the biggest problems that spellcasters have, is that resource management of their spells. It's probably one of the more exciting things about being a spellcaster as well, is like strategically using those slots to do what you need to do. And obviously, there are things that happen in a Dungeons & Dragons campaign that you can't foresee. And sometimes it gets to the point where, you've made one choice to save your party member being Grog, but on the other hand, you do lose that innocent member of the community of the Shale Steps as a consequence. So that sort of give and take is really common in the Critical Role campaigns as well, because Matt's really, really good at sort of offering these guys and the players some moments to sort of cherish, and some moments where they can use their abilities really well. But then on the other hand, he really presents them with some really tough choices on occasion too.
Yeah, and I do like it because whenever those moments happen, it's always tough on Matt as well. That's another reason why I believe he's such a good DM, because even though he will completely wipe out the party, like, he doesn't take joy in it.
Yeah, and he doesn't set out to as well, which I think is a a status quo that I think gets a little bit muddled at some D&D tables as well, because there's one person that's sitting behind the screen and throwing all these monsters at you. Sometimes it feels like your D&D party is against that guy. But everybody that plays Dungeons & Dragons has to remember that that guy, the DM, has put a lot of work into this game, and really they just want to see you guys have fun, and as a result, they can have some fun too, because we're all there playing a game. But yeah, I do think Matt does it well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there are a whole lot of heartbreaking moments in Critical Role, which is always good to see. And a lot of them, even Matt doesn't even do this, the actual characters, because the players themselves do it to themselves.
Yeah.
And
they're completely invested too. It's great.
That's the thing. And they sort of create their own sort of little dramas and inside of Matt's world, and Matt's just sitting there going, yes, this is it.
Yeah. I think the best moments of Critical Role that I've watched is the times when Matt has been silent for like 25 to 30 minutes and the players are
just going off on their own.
Going off on their own, or talking with one another, or doing character dialogue, or going through an arc, and that sort of character-driven game is really, really great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. All right, we'll move on to episode 2 because the credits close there, and we open to the second episode, which is obviously called "The Terror of Taldore" Part 2, and we open up to General Krieg addressing his men, and this is where the amazing Felicia Day guest stars as a captain, and he says something along the lines of "a storm is coming tonight," and that's really sort of ironic considering he is the storm that is going to be coming. Greatest moments in this episode early on is when they're readdressing the Council of Taldore, and they go in and they say the enemy is nothing more than a blue dragon, and they're like, we know, and then they go outside and they end up talking about who said what, and they're flinging all these names around, and Grog in the end is just like, I didn't get anybody's name. And I think that's a really common D&D player trope as well.
Yeah.
And for DMs as well, but for players especially, there's so many times you're around the table and just like, that guy, the one with the scars, and nobody ever knows the character's actual name. So that's a really common thing that they threw in there for the players as well that I loved. That was really great early on in the episode.
Yeah, and then they figure, because they've invested now with the death of their child, they're all motivated to be like, no, we're going to kill this dragon, even if it kills us. And they're seemingly being dismissed by the council, so they're like, screw it, we'll do it ourselves. So they split up. One group, which generally you should never really do, split the party, but they split the party.
In 3, yeah.
They split Vax and Pike to go to see Gilmore, while Scanlan and Grog go off to...
We'll talk about Scanlan and Grog's little escapade first, and then we'll jump into the Gilmore shop, because I think there's a little bit to dissect there.
There is a bit.
Yeah, so when we're talking about Grog and Scanlan, that's a pairing that happens all the time in the Critical Role Twitch broadcast. And it's usually for, comical or funny sort of results. I know that when they're doing the team-ups and you hear them sort of divvying out the missions, and they say, Grog and Scanlan, you go and do this, and you just see Sam and Travis just sort of look at each other, grin, and you're like, okay, shit's happening here. The boys are together. Yeah. And, as it showed in the show, very, very quickly, they always kind of get up to no good because they get bored, and then the rest of it happens, yeah.
They end up just sitting down in the middle of the square, pretty much giving up on finding him at all, and instead Scanlan's like, do you know where he's going to be? He's going to be at a brothel.
Yeah. Very common for those two to go and seek out the ladies of the night.
And I like how also that this again shows the sort of hate relationship that Vex and Scanlan have towards sort of each other, because Grog's like, oh no, Vex will get up us if we don't do what she says, blah, blah. And Scanlan's like, oh, no, it's fine. I'm the brains of this group anyway.
Yeah.
And then Grog's like, oh, but Vex said you had dicks for brains. Oh. He's like, I don't know how it's possible. And,
it seems impossible to be.
So you can see the sort of hate relationship between Scanlan and Vex in that moment too. But in that moment, they happen to spot the thin cripple.
Yeah. And I really like that part too, because I think in that scene, it actually showed another really awesome D&D mechanic as well, which is the stealth check.
Yeah.
And sometimes the stealth checks in the Critical Role campaign were absolutely ridiculous because, Matt would say, where are you hiding? They'd describe their hide. And it would be as ridiculous as, I'm going to drink the entire barrel of ale to obscure my face and Scanlan will be hiding inside the ale barrel that I'm drinking.
Yeah.
Or, as they had to make a second one because they've made the noise, it would be as ridiculous as I will roll behind a carton or a pile of crates and hope not to be seen. And, that timing of that animation is really, really great too, because as, Fisk turns around, Grog just sort of does this rolling around and behind these crates. It's just so funny to see the big man do such a funny role.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a really great addition as a D&D mechanic in the show as well.
And they must have passed the stealth check the whole way following him too, because they ended up following him to a mansion.
Yep.
And spying with Scanlan on Grog's shoulders.
Mm-hmm. And the perception check that they must have done to see, that he had the knife and he looked through and he walked through the door. Must have failed the perception check though when he actually went and bumped his head on the sign as they went past as well. But perception checks are a very common sort of staple of D&D also.
But then he must have failed his perception check when he didn't notice them when he yelled out "fuck" after hitting his head.
Yeah. That's true. That is true. Yeah. Sometimes you don't think of it in terms of the antagonists of a show, but yeah, obviously in a Dungeons and Dragons game, all of the things that those characters are doing are rolled for as well. So yeah, he would have failed his perception check to see them, which is awesome to see, that sort of playing out on the cartoon screen. Let's jump back now to Gilmore's Glorious Goods, a fan favorite character and probably Matt Mercer's favorite NPC, at least of Campaign 1. We meet Gilmore for the first time, who is a very verbose sort of character. He's very flirtatious as well. He's in your face. He's extremely powerful and magical, and he has lots of secrets to share. Obviously, as they walk into this magic-filled shop, we can already see that Vax and Gilmore have a little bit of history. I thought this was really well done and really well sort of told through the fact that after some conversing, you actually saw Gilmore do the coin trick that Vax was doing in the episode earlier with the coin across his knuckles, showing that, they've either taught each other that or they learnt it together or it's something that they have in common at the very least. And that sort of connection to the character sort of subconsciously joins you with that pair. And there was, some chemistry in the Twitch campaign between those two characters as well, yeah.
And I do actually highly recommend, and they're reasonably priced, if anyone's interested in reading the comics. The Critical Role has the comics out that shows what happened, like how they all met.
That's so good, yeah.
Yeah, so I've got them all and I've read through them all. And yeah, they're really good. And
we'll put those comics in the show notes below, at least the names of them, so people can go and look them up if they want to get some more information about Vox Machina and Critical Role.
Yeah, but going back to Gilmore, there's a few little tidbits that people might only know if they've seen the campaign too.
Yeah,
so,
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs
is coming early.
So when Pike's gone through, she'll see there's like a little orange or red ferret in the background there, which sort of hints towards Jester's. What's it called? It's called like an ember ferret or
companion. A red weasel.
Red weasel, yeah. And her red weasel. What was his name?
Ends up being Artagan.
Yeah. But they always joked about how it's been dead the whole entire time.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of
she takes so much damage,
damage, and because it's always around her neck, it would take damage like in explosions and shit. Like it should have been dead like
25 times over. Yeah.
But then Pike goes past in a book. He's apparating all these items in the store, and he apparates a book called Tusk Love, which is a book that Jester has in campaign 2 that she reads. That's about a tiefling woman and a half-orc man.
Very familiar from Jester and Ford, who are the characters of Laura and Travis in campaign 2.
Yep.
That sort of fictional book is like the cornerstone of their love story in that campaign, and it features here in the episode of Vox Machina.
It's a bit of a smutty book.
Yes.
So I thought that was really good. Now, one thing I've been trying to find out, because it's there, and I want to know if it actually is something, but I haven't been able to find anything else on it. And I can't remember because there's so many episodes. I'm trying to remember, but there's like just that sandal that's in a jar.
Yes, they focused in on that sandal specifically. I can't see anything about it either. So if you're listening to this and you're a community member and you know of Critical Role, definitely hit us up on our socials, DM me, because we want to know what that sandal's all about, because I think it is something as well. Maybe it's something coming in the future. Not too
Yeah,
sure.
I don't know. I'm not sure if it's. I'm sure it's got to do with something that they couldn't fit into the show.
Yeah, I'm going to put that out into the community. I'll put a question on threads for everybody to have a look at that one.
In the story, like you see armor, tomes, potions.
Yeah, all the accoutrement of various different sort of anything you could open up and see in the player's handbook in the item shopping section is definitely in Gilmore's Glorious Goods. One thing that I found that was really cool was there's obviously the Triceratops skull there, and that's a key moment in Campaign 1 where Scanlan was running across the roofs of Whitestone, transformed into the Triceratops and absolutely annihilated some of the guards across that area. Very important and awesome moment for him. I don't know if it's there as like a nod or foreshadowing to that moment, or if it's just coincidence, but it's good
a bit
for
of a nod
fans.
because they couldn't put that part in, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think that was really great. Underneath that as well, there's the flying broom, which I think is in reference to Vex's flying broom that occurs later on in the season that she gets from Garmelie. And you're going back to what you were saying about the red weasel. Eventually we know that weasel becomes Artagan in Campaign 2, which is Jester's patron, who is Laura's character. But there's also a red weasel in the first episode of Vox Machina as well, when Scanlan's singing his song and he's describing Keyleth's character when he talks about how, she's a master of the wild and the animals and the elements. There's a weasel on the tree in the background as well. So I'm wondering if that sort of Artagan
running through the forests,
if that sort of Artagan element is just like a spot Matt, is it a spot the red weasel kind of thing as the episodes go through also. And then we come to after they leave, obviously they ask Gilmore all the information for the dragons, looking for vulnerabilities and immunities, which is an important part of D&D as well. Offers them the dragon lance of slaying, which is way beyond their price point too, and he gives them some lore background which sort of helps them out as well. But then they get to a door, and as the party reunites, they obviously go and try to find where Fisk went, Finst, and they get to a door, which is Critical Role and Vox Machina's greatest adversary.
In every campaign, they seem to have some sort of trouble with some sort of inanimate object. So campaign was doors, campaign 2 was chairs. It's just been an ongoing thing of they just have trouble with some sort of inanimate object at some point. And doors are a major one for them. They had a lot of trouble getting through a lot of doors, and sometimes we're just even defeated by the doors.
Yeah, I think Sam actually took damage from a door at one point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because I think Grog tried to throw him through the door or something.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But, so Scanlan first tries to unlocking the door. I believe he probably would have used like knock or something maybe.
Yeah, or bardic inspiration or something like that. I thought knock as well, but knock usually opens it.
Yeah, it would automatically, but because usually he would use his Bigby's or his Scanlan's hands to pick locks. That's what he usually did in the live action. He used the Bigby's hands because that way he can stay at a distance, so if it was trapped, it wouldn't hurt him because he's using the hand. And then Keyleth goes ahead and tries to heat the metal to try and melt the lock. And that's
another D&D spell.
Another D&D spell, and one that she actually really liked. She really did use a lot as well. Keyleth, she did use heat metal a lot, which then ends up burning Scanlan's fine silk shirt. And they have like a little bit of argument, and then it pushes back to Pike, who's trying to see if the door's magic by using detect magic.
Or a Arcana check of some kind.
Arcana check.
Yeah. You just see her come out with just like that random information just from touching her temple, and you're just like, okay, that was a roll and a check that the player character knows and is trying to role play in the scene.
Yeah, and they all fail miserably. And then Vex saves the day by being the rogue he is. He grabs the toothpick out of Grog's sandwich that Grog's very upset about, and then picks the lock with this toothpick, manages to get through it, calls them all amateurs, and that all they need is a bit of finesse, and then walks through the door.
Exactly, which is a completely rogue trait as well. Vax being the rogue of the group, they get access to thieves' tools. They're proficient in those as well, and they can also get an ability called expertise, which doubles their proficiency in it as well. So they're very good at opening locks and doors, and any other skill. They're really called skill monkeys, aren't they, Adam? They're kind of not spell users, but skill monkeys.
Playing either a rogue or a bard can get you very highly skilled in various things. whereas other
It's a
people
kind
will
of
have to
different
work
way to
for it.
strategize. Yeah, it's a different way to strategize through a situation where a lot of spellcasters would try to say, what spell do I use in this situation? Whereas a rogue or a bard might use their brain in a
Abilities.
different way, abilities. They then go into this manner and they're looking for various different ways in to find where Vince went. And obviously this is perception checks abound, again, using the D&D vernacular. And, Vax, once again, probably through looking for traps, which is another great sort of rogue ability, he was able to find, the hidden doorway. And also I think you get that as a background ability as well for being a urchin, where the various different sort of ways through the city and things like that, or secret passages and things like that. But either way, Vax ends up finding that cellar door, and they end up going all the way down until they finally find Fince, who they are revealed to be the instigator or the person who gives Vex the headaches, but it does in fact end up being General Krieg. Now, Vax also makes a comment during this time and was just like, oh, that was a really great technique that you used there. I didn't hear a thing, because General Krieg is obviously wearing heavy armor, and in D&D, heavy armor makes you roll with disadvantage. So obviously would have passed that and stabbed through.
And I like how they made him, like, he turned around and he started pleading. He's like, no, I'm here to find information. But he's like the only other council member who's like started clicking on to the fact that so he might have had like insight, like he might have done the insight on
high insight,
high insight on, and was like, hang on, something's not right here. And then like, especially probably it was probably after, like, he was saying how all these troops were wiped out and only him and a couple of others managed to survive. And he's like, yeah, but they probably came back all battered and bruised, and you're like perfectly fine. That's a bit weird.
Yeah.
And probably did the insight and was like, there's
something's
fishy
going on here. Yeah, because Fince was definitely probably one of the more intelligent members of the Council of Taldore as well. But, obviously Krieg runs away and they follow through and they get into this sort of area, this den, you might say, that's full of various different knickknacks and lots of different sort of symbology here as well that's D&D reminiscent. So we had Gilmore's Glorious Goods, and now we have this sort of area here. One thing that I definitely noticed is obviously the rug on the floor, which pictures the 5 dragons, which is a foreshadowing moment for Season 2, but also for the upcoming campaign in the live Twitch stream, where they actually versed against the Chroma Conclave, which is the 5 sort of coloured dragons, which ended up going through to wipe out all of Taldore, with Brimscythe, the blue dragon, being one of the members of the Chroma Conclave, and that being their symbol, which was on the floor. So sharp-eyed fans would have obviously noticed that as part of the canon.
Yeah, I really like, because Puck goes in there and must at that point used detect magic because everything lit up.
Glowing and pinging with a detect magic spell.
I do like that. I wish they had just sort of panned over maybe a couple of the magic items just to show off a few of the magic items, but unfortunately they didn't really do that. They just did a quick pan and that was it. Yeah, so then obviously it's time to venture through the mystical booty portrait.
Portal? Which is a total D&D thing as well, naming things in silly ways. There is a massive booty on the portrait, and then everybody needs to walk through it. There would have been some laughs around the table at that.
But that's the thing too with dragons as well. Their lairs are usually away from where they usually set up. If they're being human, they'll set up something. They'll have a portal or something that takes them to their actual lair. That's another big trope for
D&D lore. Yeah, and when they went into the keep as well, and they started to venture further down, they actually found the Horde, which is another big piece of D&D lore for dragons. Obviously, the Horde is something that's really sort of popularized, and it's usually gold or trinkets or various different magical items. But I think it's especially prevalent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for blue dragons, they absolutely love gold more so than any other sort of chromatic color. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, blue is very gold hungry, whereas red's more enslaving and
aggressive
and just angry. Green is like the more nomadic sort of one.
Yeah, they're kind of
actually
violent, seductive too.
Yeah, they're more of the in the shadows, keep to themselves. They don't have a big horde, but they just like to keep them like to themselves and just do like plotting sort of thing. And then you got black dragons who are just gross.
Yeah, swamps. Black dragons are swamp dwelling
acid and shit. And Just grossness.
they're vile. Yeah, and then the white dragons are more primal, aren't they? They're more
Yeah,
animalistic, and they love
animalistic.
the hunt, and they like to toy with their prey and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
there's definitely different abilities for all different dragons, but they pursued the blue one here, obviously, because that's Brimside, and they really showed that they love the gold aspect of that sort of dragon horde as well. So if you know you play your monster manual and you know your blue chromatic dragons, then that would have ticked the box for you there. And then amongst that horde, we obviously find another dismembered piece of body, which comes up a lot for some reason. I don't know why. Where did the troll dick come from?
I'm not sure. I believe that they did just. I think it was Sam. It was Sam who came up with it, and I think it was just a thing. Like I don't know. I think because they did fight some trolls, and I do have a feeling that they may have taken it off of a troll. But they did have a troll deck for a while.
Yeah. I
And
think that's just
that was
funny.
also just kept in the bag of holding, like the other body parts that they kept.
Tell you what, though, this reminds me, as a dungeon master, and you being one yourself as well, the search history of a dungeon master is akin to just the worst kind of stuff, because the amount of things that you have to look up or learn about just to find that tiny piece of information, because you know your players are going to ask for it. So, the things you'd look up are just crazy, like how to navigate at sea was another thing that I looked up, which I may not ever use in my life, but I know how to do it because I played Dungeons and Dragons. It's just crazy, like rabbit holes that you go down when you're playing D&D, and like I feel like Troll Dick was just one of them. They were just like, this is going to happen.
The anatomy of many different creatures.
Yeah, exactly. And
so it's like they want to harvest whatever they can off these creatures, and so you have to
that's a big thing.
Okay, so you can get claws, teeth.
Yeah,
scales.
And how much are they worth? What can you create out of them? That kind of thing. It just goes down a rabbit hole. But they actually do nod to that here in the second episode of Vox Machina, when Grog goes and like snaps off the tooth after they eventually defeat Brimscythe. But before we jump to that, let's talk about the actual conflict with that dragon, because they obviously find him. General Krieg is revealed to be the dragon, and then the combat ensues. Initiative is rolled again, and they basically get the floor wiped with them once more, and they realize that they have to work together as a team, which is key in Dungeons of Dragons as a player.
Vex is the one that before he walked in the portal was like, hey, before we go in there, we should probably do this as a team. And then they're like, nah, fuck it, let's do what we always do, we just fuck shit up. Vex comes up with the weak spot being in via the neck.
Yeah.
Because it looks like Twin Rivers, which is the information they got from that poem that they got from the book from Gilmore.
Exactly. The quest coming to a close in the final act.
So all the information coming together, they're using it to beat the final big bad, sort of one-shot sort of trope, sort of, because it is sort of like a one-shot sort of adventure, these first sort of two episodes.
Exactly, the first two episodes is just like a one-shot, which is, for anybody that doesn't know the terminology, a one-shot is a small adventure that you usually do with a set of characters that lasts for one session or two sessions, and then it's done. It doesn't really go on to a larger campaign, which is what these first two episodes feel like, because after these episodes, obviously it goes into the Briarwood arc. But during that combat as well, I saw and noticed Percy's action surge. He went through, he shot twice, reloaded, and shot again.
Yep.
I also saw, Vax doing his thing, obviously using some sort of dodging, which is part of the rogue trope as well, uncanny dodge or evasion as he's dodging through the rocks, which is a D&D character trope. And Scanlan using his hand once more as well. And there was something going on with Pike and Vex. I wasn't sure, like she did something to her arrow.
Yeah, so that would be a holy weapon. Yeah.
Right.
So makes it do radiant damage as well.
And then, Travis Willingham has coined one of the greatest phrases ever for a barbarian, and it comes out in this episode.
Yeah, so famously now, with barbarians, whenever you tell the DM you want to rage, Travis first started saying this, and now, like, even I say it every now and then when I play a barbarian. He always coined the term that whenever he was to rage, he would say, I would like to rage.
In the politest way possible.
In the politest way. So in the animation, of course, they had to add it in. So when Vex is like, to Grog, he's nice and low now. Grog sets himself, he digs his heels in, and he yells out, I would like to rage, as he starts tearing off towards Brimscythe as they both collide towards each other. Unfortunately for Brimscythe, Grog's just that much better and absolutely just splits his head in two with his axe.
That
which I
was the
thought
how
was
do you want
really
to do
good.
this moment, which
Oh,
Matt is
yeah.
famous for as well. And for those that don't know, during the live shows or during the Twitch campaigns, whenever somebody would get the final hit on a creature, Matt would say, how do you want to do this? And the characters themselves would describe what their characters do. And it's usually the gnarliest shit that they can think of. And that is reminiscent here in the last sort of scene of episode 2 of Vox Machina, where that dragon head is completely in half, from eyebrow to nose,
Yeah.
just absolutely split. Yeah.
And yeah, Krog, as usual, just covered in blood.
Yep. And I loved as well, even the small touch afterwards where he turned around and he was completely exhausted because, after you rage as a barbarian, you do suffer those points of exhaustion.
Yeah, well,
Go back to Imon. They are granted protectors of the realm and given the keys to the keep, which in the Twitch show they call Grayskull Keep, but obviously for copyright reasons they can't copy He-Man, so they just call it their keep. And we're introduced to the new big bad in an almost after credits sequence kind of thing in the Lady and Lord Briarwood. And that is sort of everything that happened in episode 1 and 2 and all of the different sort of Easter eggs that you can expect, all of the different Dungeons and Dragons mechanics that were present within it as well. Thanks so much for joining me on this, Adam. It's been a really great conversation and awesome to talk about D&D with you. We both have a big past in Dungeons and Dragons and I love talking about it wherever I can. So thanks for joining me.
Of course. No, I love it. Anytime at all.
No, it's been awesome. And, to our listeners as well, this has been one of the many episodes in October where we are doing everything to do with animation in order to celebrate animation for our Animation Celebration Month. The 28th of October is International Animation Day, and we're celebrating the art form fully. So make sure you stay tuned this month for other animated themed episodes. And if you love what you are hearing about Vox Machina, then there are many places that you can seek D&D content related to it. The first of which is obviously YouTube. You can look up the Critical Role Gang. They have 3 campaigns going now, over 1,000 hours of gameplay of Dungeons and Dragons that you can just Google and see. You can also throw us a bone at the D&D Valiant Odyssey podcast, and you can go and see some of our narrative roleplay Dungeons and Dragons podcasts if that was something that you're into. The comics and the names of those Vox Machina comments will be in the show notes below. There's obviously also 3rd season that has just come out for The Legend of Vox Machina that premiered on the 3rd or the 4th of October, depending on where you are in the world. And I encourage you to watch that as well. I've been Aaron. That's been Adam. And this has been the Fandom Portals podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you go and subscribe Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we'll connect with respect as always. And we'll catch you later. Bye.